Hello and welcome back to Coffee with the County, Local Voices series today. I am with Pat Murphy, who is the current president of ACLARA, Aiken County Lakes and Rivers Association, along with about 400 other hats that we'll get into. But hello, Pat, how are you doing?
Mark, real good, thanks.
Good to have you in here. And President, we'll start right away.
Okay.
Talking about what it is that you're doing in the local area. But let's get to Pat Murphy first. Are you a lifelong resident?
All right, I'll give you as quick as I can here.
Yeah.
All right, so I think my first time up here, the summer of 1981, it was, I went up with my girlfriend at the time, is now my wife, and we went to her grandparents' cabin on Long Lake, which is the same place we live in now. We bought it in 1989. We would come up in the summer times, occasionally a little winter time, especially when we bought the place. We shut the water off, everything else wasn't a winter cabin. Went from there that I got to say that always looked at, gosh, wouldn't it be fun to get a job up here, to actually work up here?
Sure.
And, I was, at that first time in 81, I was driving tractor trailer for Whirlpool Corporation. Whirlpool and Sears were the national carriers, and Whirlpool left town. Instead of getting another trucking job, my wife convinced me that since I'd already started going back to school, why don't you work at Northwest Airlines? So I worked there. I worked on the ramp, loading bags. Long story there, 23 years later, I decided to leave there. We had this place up north, and in 2010, we decided to take the old place down, build another place. In the meantime, we had owned it since 1989. I got a job up here with Revell Trucking in 2015. As I had mentioned before, you always look at, wouldn't it be fun if you could work up here? Mm-hmm. And found a job. I know a lot of people have come up here now that can work from home, but they didn't have that in 2015, really, even. So I eventually retired as the Vice President of Operations for Revell Trucking in McGregor and in Superior, Wisconsin.
Yeah, awesome. So it sounds like you retired and you wanted to relax, and it sounds like you're much busier then.
That's right, Mike.
Yeah.
I guess I couldn't sit quiet for too long. I'd learned so many things in the different jobs that I had that I guess I wanted to share it, if anything else, the things I've done and how I've done it. I know how to do it, basically, operations. So.
Yeah, well, and it's a great story, too, of, having that summertime cabin, having all those thoughts and hopes that you eventually want to get here long term. And there's that magic story. Now you're out on Long Lake and you've got a great property and you're enjoying yourself and staying busy, too, right?
Oh, absolutely. I know that it was so fun to see. Even though I didn't always have weekends off working at Northwest Airlines, I found that there's a whole different group of people Monday through Friday than there are Saturday and Sunday.
Sure.
And living up here in McGregor, I got to meet so many people, through the job that I had, all over through Duluth, Carlton, Cloquet, all over that I got to meet and work with. And it was just a lot of fun. I did all the hiring at Revell, so I got to meet every driver, and also since I have a Class A yet, I'm the one that would take them out on the road test and yay or nay, basically. So it was fun. So for the listeners out there, you just caught on to the fact that he's got a Class A still. If you need anything moved, now we won't go that far, but why don't you tell me a little bit about ACLARA and what does it mean to be the current president of the Lakes and Rivers Association? Well, Mark, it started when I joined the board at Long Lake because we had a good association there, and they were looking for an ACLARA rep. And Aiken County Lakes and Rivers, every lake that we represent will have a representative and an alternate. So I started out as an alternate. I got going the first 3 years before I became president, probably, and I enjoyed the guest speakers. Gordon Prickett was the president before me, and he always brought in some pretty good, speakers, that type of thing, and I've always had something good or bad to say about whatever. And Gordon even asked me if I'd take over. It was getting too much for him. And I said, well, I'll wait till I retire, which was, they even caught me before I retired in 2019. And I've been president since 2018, 2019.
Okay.
And it's one of those things that somewhat started out keeping me busy. You can be as busy as you want to do this. And representing 20 lake associations in Aiken County, it can be good and very busy, Or sometimes you listen and, gosh, I got to keep neutral on this, and you can't go one way or another too much. But you're the voice of other lake associations. I've ended up meeting and speaking at most of our lake associations. I'll go to their picnics or their meeting or something like that. And out of this, Long Lake Conservation asked me to come to speak to college students about what we do in Aiken counties on our lakes and talk about naturally better, how we do it and how we represent our lakes. And, it was just a good networking thing. I like the fact that I get to meet a lot of different people in it that are associated with lakes. Those that are not are also some good speakers, like yourself. I've had twice out there.
Yep, I've done that.
And it's to let our lake reps know what's going on. What they do is they go back, they write it up in their newsletters that go out usually, maybe 2-3 times a year, sometimes more, in their email newsletters now. We don't have to do the stamps and postage and all that, so they get out there a little bit quicker. And we've also been the voice for the county commissioners. If they needed to get something out to our lake associations, we can do it pretty quick.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful network when you think about 20 lake association groups that all get together and report in on things, and all in an effort to protect our lakes, protect our waters, protect the land.
And
it's
have
just
fun.
And have fun. Yeah,
Right.
There's still that element in there too.
Yeah.
And it's protecting what our Aiken County story is, of your story of wanting to come up on the weekends all the time to that lake cabin, and it's still here. I'm not going to say 100 years later, but a couple years later than what you first originally bought it. 89 was a while back. But it obviously that's what it's there for, is to help and protect and get people to know the different rules, regulations, stuff, right?
Right. I got to say, too, that we lived right on Lake Marion. They were backwaters of Lake Marion. There's a railroad tracks in Lake Marion and in Lakeville. Mm-hmm. And we could see maybe 6 inches into that water. It was murky.
Yeah.
They didn't do lakeshore ordinances like we do up here. They didn't have the rules and regulations that we do up here. And it shows. And I don't want to throw Wisconsin under the bus, but my sister has a place up by Danbury. And my son was standing at the dock when he was about 10 years old, and he said, "Dad, I'm not jumping in that water." He says, "It doesn't look like home."
Yeah.
The lake.
Sure.
Yep. Up here. And
Yeah.
no, I get it. So yeah, we have a lot. We have some great lakes, and we've got to keep them that way. And that's the thing too, that we have about 3,500 residents and cabin owners that we represent.
Wow.
And that's not counting the Mille Lacs. Now, Mille Lacs is part of us too.
Yep.
But I don't count all their residents because they don't have a real lake association.
Yeah, so that's just Aiken County, 3,500 or so?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Big Sandy to Cedar Lake.
You mentioned, I may have mentioned too, the hundreds and hundreds of other hats that I think that you have. Mention a couple of those, and you can tell me about those. Mille Lacs Energy Cooperative Board. You're currently on the Aiken Growth Board, coming off of that, right? Long Lake Foundation Board. Let's see, what else? You're Glen Township Supervisor.
That's correct.
Glen Township
Yep.
Supervisor?
Yeah.
What else
You know,
can you possibly do in a week?
It was one of those things where someone will put the idea in my head. I think it was Brett Sample that called me up and said, "Pat, you got to run for that position over at Mille Lacs Energy. They can't find anybody." Well, of course, I knew Donnie Apple, that was the previous, because we're on the Dam Lake Sportsman Club together.
Sure.
And I knew him, and I knew of him, so I called him up, and he said, "Pat, I can't do it anymore." He says, "Run for it." So I did, and there was someone who ran against me, so it was an actual vote that got me on, and it's been very rewarding, I've got to say. In fact, I leave tomorrow, I should say Wednesday, for St. Cloud. Last week we were in the Twin Cities. And you did have different meetings to go to. I love learning, and so it's a good experience.
Yeah, so 2 lessons so far is you love learning, learn everything that you can, and get to know all the right people, right?
That's about it.
I learned that from you at Growth Innovations Aiken Growth. That's where our paths originally crossed, and I spent a brief time before I moved into this role here with Aiken Growth. You were one of the people that that hired me over there, which thank you for that.
Yeah.
There you go. Absolutely.
And Mark, I worked 7 years in the beverage business when I got out of high school. So I knew how valuable that beverage background was for you, and that you would do just fine, with the community efforts there.
Appreciate that very much. But it was about, for me, and I think we agree on, it was getting to know the people and getting out there into the public and getting to know the people that make the difference.
Right.
You're one of those people that make the difference, and you also know all the other people that do. Putting the right people in the right room when you want a project to move forward or gaining momentum, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Is the only way to go.
Yep.
Thinking about that, one of the main things that Aiken Growth has accomplished in the last couple of years that you had a large hand in is the apartment complex on Bunker Hill.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, Mark, that started back when I was still working at Revell Trucking, and I couldn't find housing up here, and I lost out on some drivers and managers too, because there was no place to live. I would take a manager around and show them Aiken, McGregor. It just wasn't there, and our drivers. I had a driver who evicted from his apartment in Hibbing. And I said, hey, no problem, I'll find you a place here. We didn't want to lose that driver. Yeah. And I couldn't. I looked all over to find a vacancy for him, and we ended up, he bought a house over off of Highway 65, a single guy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with a lot of these need is just an apartment, a studio apartment type of thing, and there wasn't even that. Well, we did. We had some in McGregor. The heating bill was just as high as the rent. So it wasn't that great. And I know that Barb Carr from Growth Innovations asked me, she says, because I was interviewed twice by Aiken Age about voicing the lack of housing here and how it was hurting our company. Yep. We had over 100 employees at the time, and less than half of them lived in Aiken County. And they were all scattered all over. We could have done even better, and I'm losing drivers, I'm losing people because I didn't have the housing. Yeah. So she said, I read about your thoughts about housing. Would you like to be on our board? That's how I got on it. I said, yep, as soon as I retire, which was in 2019, I'll be there. And I did. Mark, you started, I don't know, maybe a year later, if even that.
Yeah.
And I said, the thing we got to do, let's get some housing here. Let's get an apartment. We got to get a base. I said, that's going to draw in jobs. And I said, the way it's looking right now at Revell Trucking, we're going to have to build in Duluth Superior. Yeah. And we did. We had to we did Carlton first, and then we went over to Superior and put terminals. And because there's, the housing factor, we're growing in Superior. Yeah. And we're growing in McGregor too, but it's Superior that has more of it going for us. Yeah. So that was a tough one, and I said, let's get it going, and we had many setbacks. And we got a lot of other things accomplished that were really, helping businesses grow. Mm-hmm. That was the big thing throughout the county. Yeah. It wasn't just Aiken here. So to get this apartment going, it was really, Stan, when we hired Stan as the executive director, and now we've got Tammy, and those two together were dynamite. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, it was a great story to watch.
And really, I signed the papers to move on for our next project, which is the senior living. That's going to be right in that neighborhood over there.
Right across the street to the north of the complex now. And if you haven't gone over on Bunker Hill and taken a look at what's going on there, they're really making some progress on getting that built. So.
It's exciting. It really is. And I know that not everybody seems to think we need that, but it's already filling up. Mm-hmm. So we'll be just fine.
Well, there is no doubt in anyone's mind that you talk to that we need housing in Aiken. And we need multifamily housing. We need affordable single-family homes that the local worker can afford to move into. And that's what starts the progression if you want to have workforce increases. If you want to have manufacturers come, the first question I get asked is, well, where do my people come from? Where are they going to live? You got to answer that housing question. So this will jumpstart a lot of momentum in our area.
Especially
this
for the hospital, the nurses, the doctors.
Especially at 55 plus too. Mm-hmm. When you think about Riverwood having the accessible to the apartment complex so close for new employees, but then you think of a 55 plus being less than, it's a short walk over to Riverwood for
Right.
any kind of medical appointments that they would need. It's just so convenient. It's in a great spot. It's going to be a great building and jumpstart our momentum. So nice work on that.
Oh, well, thanks. It was a labor of love, I gotta say, because we knew what the end goal would be when we got that going. So it feels good. And so, like I said, I put in my notice now that I got my goal. My last meeting will be, I think it's that I will chair is June 11th. And I've already named some names that we can have take my place, and there's some pretty good people in this area that would do just fine.
That's good. I'm looking forward to that, and congratulations to you as you, I'm sure, do less right now. That's not Pat Murphy. You'll find another board that needs your help.
You never know what I'm going to do next, I guess. So, yeah.
It's always that positive, your positive energy and wanting to solve problems that I've always been pretty, I've been pretty happy to learn from you on that, and exactly how to go about just putting the right people in the right place. I can't say it more often or better than that, I don't think.
No, that's it, Mark. And that's what I've always been good at, building teams, just as you said. So
yeah, that's exactly what it is. How about coming up for ACLARA? Anything? Are there monthly meetings that people can attend as we start to get closer to the spring?
There is. And, we've got the second Saturday of the months, April through October. In the second Saturday, we meet at 9:30 over at the library. I've got to say that the changes that come up, they can look at your website, to see that, because usually April and May, it's the same date that we have May, the book sale at the library. So we don't, and we usually will have our meeting at the 40 Club. And I know that AIS, I'm on that board. Brian, who's in charge of the AIS relay, I've already booked him for our first meeting. I said, you come in and explain what you want to the rest of our lake reps on a grant for AIS. He's going to come in and do that, except, a lot of this has to be done before our first meeting in April. March is when he's trying for, but I said, come in. What kind of dollars are out there to help our lake associations take on the task of AIS?
Sure, that's cool.
That's aquatic invasive species to anybody else.
Sorry about that. I assumed everybody knows that, but thanks for clarifying that. And there was another watershed thing that you're part of, too?
Yeah, I'm on water planning. That's with Soil and Water, Janet Smoody, the group. I've been on that one for a while. And, we've got a budget that we can work on, and so myself, I always thought it's best if you were around the dollars, to see where they go and see if there's, how much there is and where the need is and that type of thing. And I know too that last year we gave some money to the Keep It Clean campaign, and that's over on Mille Lacs, which is also, like I say, part of our group. But Ann Bruciani has done just a great job of making that a law, that you can't really throw trash on ice.
Yeah, that was an amazing story of how she got that done so quickly, right?
Unbelievable.
As far as legislative.
Well, that gets me to this one. Since I did spend almost 5 years as a legislative rep with the Machinists Union at Northwest Airlines, before I went into management, I know my way around the halls of D.C. and St. Paul. Ann called me up and said, say, how long will it take to make this a law? It's basically what her question was. And I said, I'll give it 4 or 5 years, Ann. And I said, and that's because it's a bipartisan issue. Everybody wants the trash off a lake.
Yep.
Well, her and her group, they got together and they put that together, made it a law in 1 year.
Wow.
So I've got to say she did a great job.
That's a great story there for sure.
And that's the person that I keep in contact with, so she gets things done.
Right people in the right places. Yeah. And Pat Murphy is one of those people. If you need to get to know a leader in our area, in our community, it's Pat. And Pat, thank you for all that you do out there. I know we only briefly touched just a small amount of things that you're committed to out there, but...
Well, Mark, let me say this too. You do a great job yourself. Oh. I'm so glad that you came over here to do this. We still work together quite a bit.
Yes, quite a bit. And I'll slide you some money for that nice plug at the end.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. We'll talk to you very soon. That's Pat Murphy, current president of ACLARA, Aiken County Lakes and Rivers Association, and you're listening to Coffee with the County.